FreedomToons.
Welcome to the Echo Chamber. I'm your host, Dr. Mac. In today's news, a terrible terrorist attack that has nothing to do with Islam took place after a Muslim killed dozens. Innocent people were killed. Others were maimed. Blood was spilled, and Western society is that much less safe for everyone. Today, I'm honored to have the sobering opportunity to interview one of the victims. Here, we have Muhammad, who was offended by Trump's Islamophobic tweets about the event.
It was terrible. Something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. This kind of thing is becoming so much more common as time goes on. I don't know how anyone could feel safe anymore. This kind of thing is happening all the time in the West nowadays.
Yep, as a matter of fact, Islamophobic tweets from Westerners are becoming more and more common, as can be seen in this graph.
I have no idea what could be causing this kind of thing.
Oh, who knows?
Who knows?
One of life's mysteries.
Are you serious? I saw my life flash before my eyes along with the glow of a homemade explosive. My best friend died.
Wow. Just... wow. You're a real victim, Mr. White Male. Get a load of this guy. Dude, we're trying to talk about the important issues here, okay?
I know it's not popular, but I'll say it. This is why we need to screen people's Twitters before letting them enter Europe or the US.
Well, of course. You can't just let anyone in. If people aren't going to conform to our values, it would be cultural suicide to allow them to just swarm us in massive numbers.
That would be suicide.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider donating on Patreon to help us make more. Thanks so much.
FreedomToons.
Okay, folks, so as you know, Nazism is on the rise, and we need to stop them, which is why I've invented a time machine to bring back the people who defeated Nazism in the first place.
Perfect!
Yes!
Hey, this ain't Normandy.
What gives? What year is it?
It's 2018!
Why did you say that so weird?
Sorry, force of habit. We brought you to the future because Nazism is on the rise in the US, and our president is sympathetic to them!
What?
Here's a pamphlet with all his positions.
This fella's disgusting.
Right?
This boyfriend thinks two men can get married. What?
And that a man who cuts his dongle off is a woman?
Sounds more like a commie to me, but hey, same difference. I'll kill either one.
That's not what's bad about him. It gets worse.
What else are these Nazis doing?
They believe there are only two genders.
Well, of course there's more than two genders. Thank goodness. Yeah, the Russians have their gender, the Germans have their gender, the Japanese have their gender. Everybody's got an agenda.
No, not agenda. Gender.
What the hell is gender?
Sounds like some kind of phony word popularized in the 50s to create a false distinction between one identity and their biological sex. Am I in a ballpark here? Your sex is whether you're male or female, but your gender is how you identify. So if you were born a man but want to become a woman, your gender identity is as a woman, and you therefore are a woman. Know it?
So you guys think men can be women?
Well, that's the biggest crock of nonsense I ever heard.
Yeah, none of this sounds like Nazism to me.
Well, how about this? He wants people to pay for their own birth control.
Oh, no. Yeah, birth control is legal?
The guys who defeated Nazism are such Nazis.
You know, I don't like you pinkos going around telling people you're fighting Nazis just because you berate everyone you disagree with. You've never fought a Nazi in your life, and to claim otherwise is stolen valor.
Yeah, and you know what? When actual Nazis come around, no one's gonna want to fight them anymore, because you guys keep crying wolf.
Now let's go back and win ourselves a war!
You know, I almost don't want to anymore. Wait! Don't go! We need you!
We need to say you're on our side so we can convince the greater whole of society to accept violence against dissidents who stand in the way of the social order we seek to establish.
And how exactly are they the Nazis?
Because I call them Nazis.
Well, you call men women, so... Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. FreedomToons is almost entirely fan-funded, so if you enjoyed this video, please consider donating at patreon.com/FreedomToons. Also, you can buy one of our new FreedomToons t-shirts. Please do it. I love you. Mwah.
FreedomToons.
Guess what, Lefty? I've devised a brilliant way to bankrupt your precious public school system. What? If anyone bankrupts the public school system, it's gonna be me. Fat chance. I'm proposing legislation which would allow parents to receive stipends for sending their children to private school. What? With parents receiving tax money to pick a school for their child, how will I be able to afford to hire 3,000 administrators to oversee one gym teacher? Gym teachers? I thought we banned healthy activity for schools back in the 2000s. Swipe right. Swipe right. Swipe right. Oh, don't mind me. Hiring an unaffordable number of people with this new app, Teacher, is a breeze. Swipe right. Swipe right. Ooh, an actual teacher? Swipe left. Swipe right. Well, to fund my program, we're going to have to cut your budget somewhere, bub. Let's start by firing 10,000 of the assistant administrative administrators who assist in the administrating of administrators. But then there will only be 80,000 assistant administrative administrators who assist in the administrating of administrators left. Who will assist the administrative administrators who assist in the administrating of administrators then? Good point. If anything, let's hire more. Another 20,000 sound good? Perfect. We'll fire some science teachers instead. Excellent. Ha! Can you imagine if this money was going towards teaching children and not to unneeded staff and their hefty benefits? If we spent that kind of money on actual education, children would grow up to know better than to vote for us.
Hey, I just want to thank you for watching. FreedomToons is entirely fan-funded, so if you want to see us continue with the regular uploads, please consider donating on Patreon. Thank you so much.
FreedomToons.
Welcome to the Echo Chamber. I'm your host, Dr. Mac. Tonight we're going to have a fair and balanced discussion of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Representing the correct opinion, we have myself, and representing the Islamophobic perspective, we have Merle the American.
Well, howdy. I'm here to talk about defending them nice Israelites.
So, Merle, why do you hate Muslims?
Well, the real question is, why do you hate Jews? Do you like the radical Muslim terrorists?
I mean, I don't want to say I dislike them.
The only terrible thing we can do as a Christian nation is to nuke the out of them mudslimes. It's what Jesus would want.
Look, all I'm saying is no Muslim has ever done anything wrong ever, and any suggestion that even one of them has is simply Fox News propaganda.
Look, all I'm saying is every Muslim ever is a terrorist who hates my freedoms and don't know how to drive an airplane.
Merle, this discussion isn't really going anywhere, and that's either because this is a complex issue and we're not being fair enough to one another, or because you're racist. And let's face it, you do have a southern accent and facial hair, so by default you have to be some kind of bigot.
Well, what kind of bigot am I?
Uh-oh, you asked for it. It's time for Wheel of Bigotry! Alright, Merle, spin the wheel and find out what kind of bigot you are for disagreeing with me today.
Oh, boy!
You got classist cisnormative homophobe. Alright, folks, that's all for tonight. Now for the black market report. with Tim Shamer.
New gun laws are making it more difficult to get heavy weaponry. And less strict drug laws are making it more easier to get your hands on that white stuff, folks. Sell your AR-15s and buy cocaine!
Good advice, Tim! Big back! No problem, Tim! That's all for tonight, folks! Bye, everyone! Bye! 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 Bye, everybody!
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to my buddy Corey Gulandi for allowing me to use his character Merle the American and for doing the voice wonderfully. FreedomToons is entirely fan-funded. If you like what you see, please consider donating. I love you.
FreedomToons.
I'm a brilliant intellectual.
As am I.
The two of us are sick and tired of dealing with troglodytes and have moved into a bomb shelter so we don't catch the stupid.
To stay sharp, we spend our days pursuing the pastime of true intellectuals, debunking YouTube videos.
We are the debunkers.
The founders would look at us today and be very puzzled. The idea that anybody could get a weapon of war, walk into a school and shoot it up.
Yeah, I mean, they would for sure be puzzled by the shooting up a school part, but they would absolutely be fine with citizens owning guns, given they wrote the Second Amendment.
I think they would think that was crazy.
Oh, you think the founders would be against school shootings? Interesting.
Yes, well, no one is disagreeing that school shootings are an awful travesty. According to the data, over the past 25 years, the average number of kids killed in school shootings is 10 per year. And while, of course, any number of children dead is too many, these are incredibly rare events, and we cannot allow sensationalism and fear-mongering to be used in order to strip us of our rights.
Yes, and well, furthermore, any number of dead children is too many. The same could be said for the number of Americans killed in terror attacks. Yet, miraculously, the left is able to see that stripping us of our rights in order to prevent deaths resulting from Islamic terrorism is a poor idea.
What's the exact wording of the Second Amendment? It's very short. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed.
Yes, the militia is to be well regulated, not the right of the people. This is highlighted by the shall not be infringed part.
And we've been debating about what that means for centuries.
No, we haven't. We know exactly what it means. You just don't like what it means.
The founders thought that the Second Amendment was about protecting against tyranny.
What do you mean they thought? Were they wrong? Did they not know what the Second Amendment meant when they wrote it themselves?
They really thought that these militias of citizen soldiers could stand up to a potentially tyrannical central government. But they thought, as they said, that they had to be well regulated. They had to be following the laws.
Once again, yes, the militia should be well regulated according to the Constitution. That does not mean the guns used by the militia are to be less powerful than those available to the state. That would defeat the entire purpose. And given that every mentally healthy, able-bodied male should be capable of participating in the militia, it only makes sense that this would lend the citizen the right to keep and bear arms, as is mentioned explicitly in the Second Amendment.
They would think that we were taking their words and their ideas and twisting them beyond recognition.
Sounds like projection.
Back in the time of the founding, there were gun laws. For example, in Boston, you were not allowed to have a loaded gun at home because they tended to explode and set fire to the houses.
Whoa, just like guns today do.
I love how they argue our laws need to change because guns have changed, but the law suggesting it's okay to regulate guns because they might explode while loaded is totally relevant and up-to-date.
Also note, this law was local to Boston. In other words, it was not a federal gun control law.
In 1824, the Board of Regents of the University of Virginia voted to ban guns on campus. Who were these gun grabbers? Well, James Madison, who wrote the Second Amendment, and Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence.
Once again, not a federal gun control law.
In fact, not even a state gun control law. A university setting up rules for whether or not one could have guns on campus is not the same as having a gun control law. It's simply the policy of that university specifically. No one's arguing that every institution everywhere must allow guns.
Furthermore, if the Founding Fathers intended for the Second Amendment to entail whatever kinds of regulations you yourself are pushing for, why is it that none of these laws or regulations were instated initially? After all, virtually all citizens did have easy access to the military-grade weapons of their day.
The founders would think the idea that you should arm everybody, and especially arm teachers, was crazy.
Yes, note how he lumps allowing the general population to be armed and forcing teachers to be armed into the same category. Also consider that almost nobody is saying all teachers should be armed. People are simply arguing that if a teacher is trained and qualified to handle a weapon, they should be able to do so in order to protect their students if they feel necessary.
The teacher would have shot the hell out of him before he knew what happened.
The U.S. Supreme Court didn't rule that the Second Amendment reflected an individual right to gun ownership until 2008.
Because they didn't have to.
This was the product of a concerted, very skilled, 30-year campaign by the National Rifle Association to change how we saw the Constitution.
Yes, it's true. No one believed in the individual right to keep and bear arms until 30 years ago, when the NRA tricked us into believing so.
We changed our understanding as a country of what the Second Amendment meant, and not because of some dry words scratched on parchment, but because the gun rights lobby poured its energy into changing our view of the Constitution. They want to pretend that it's an unlimited right, that any smart, sane law is an infringement on sacred freedom.
Oh, well, if you refer to the laws comprising your own agenda as smart and sane, I suppose one would have to be utterly foolish for not wanting to adopt them.
And that's just nonsense. The Second Amendment does not prohibit, does not bar strong, sensible gun laws.
Yes, it does.
Only political will and the broken political system stands in the way of that.
What I find most annoying about all of this rhetoric is that, on the one hand, they attempt to make these incredibly flimsy arguments that the founders of this nation, who wrote the Constitution with the purposes of restricting government authority and empowering the citizens as individuals, truly intended for the state to have monopoly on firepower. And once it is pointed out how absurd this notion is, they fall back on the argument that the Constitution is a living, breathing document.
Yes, if that were the case, and the Constitution were a living, breathing document to evolve along with our society, wouldn't that mean that it wouldn't matter whether or not the Founding Fathers may have been pro-gun control, though they obviously weren't? Given the data from the CDC show that guns in the US are used to prevent crimes far more often than they use to commit them, and that it's unclear that gun control is ever effective, and given that gun crime as well as all other forms of violent crime have been dropping over the past few decades, as well as the fact that there's virtually no evidence to suggest that strict gun control regimes results in violent crime rates any lower than trends would dictate they should be over time, given their pre-gun control trajectory as well as the trends of other nations, might it possibly be the case that gun control would not only be pointless but potentially dangerous regardless of what the Founding Fathers' views were? In other words, you are fake news.
Hey folks, thank you so much for watching. FreedomToons is almost entirely fan-funded, which is necessary because YouTube demonetizes us a lot. So if you want to support content which is shaking up the status quo in an entertaining way, please consider donating on Patreon. Thank you so much.
FreedomToons.
The Second Amendment was written by a bunch of smelly old men, and it only applies to muskets anyway.
Smelly?
Believe me, Jason, they didn't bathe all that often back then.
Fair, that's fair.
Besides, Australia banned guns, and now they have much less gun crime.
Australia's gun crime was falling at an identical rate far before guns were banned.
Ow! Well, England banned guns, and now they have no gun crime.
England's gun crime spiked after the 1997 gun ban, and didn't start to fall until 2002. And keep in mind, according to the CDC, America's gun crime has been falling as well, but without a similar spike. Also, there were 500 acid attacks alone in London in 2016. Bad people find different ways to hurt people. People without guns can't protect themselves.
Please, Jason, people rarely use guns to protect themselves. The good guy with a gun is a myth.
According to the CDC, people use guns to prevent crimes between 500,000 and 3 million times per year.
I suppose that's a good point, Jason. But you don't need an AR-15. AR-15s are automatic military-grade weapons.
The AR-15 is a semi-automatic civilian-grade variant of the M4 and M16 rifles. It's not military-grade, and it's not fully automatic either.
Oh, yeah, well, AR-15s are still the most dangerous weapon.
All rifles combined, including AR-15s, kill fewer people in the U.S. each year than knives.
But there were 355 mass shootings in the U.S. last year.
No, there weren't. Those numbers count 3 or more people being injured by a gun a mass shooting. In nearly half of those 355 mass shootings, not a single person died.
Well, that's very informative. Where are you getting these statistics?
I've researched this.
Good for you.
I'm starting to regret it.
Well, research this, nerd. The Second Amendment is only there to give the government the right to own guns.
I thought you said the Second Amendment only applies to muskets.
Dang it!
Hey folks, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please consider supporting the show by donating on Patreon. FreedomToons is almost entirely fan-funded. YouTube demonetizes us a lot. And to all my fans who live in countries where they don't have the legal right to keep and bear arms, donate on Patreon or I'll shoot you. What are you gonna do about it? Love ya!
A German girl, Christian, white girl, if you need more descriptors, was bullied by Muslims. By Muslim girls. How? Why? Well, here, let me read some more. The reasons: she has blonde hair, no headscarf, has a German Hebrew name, and we are Christians. My daughter broke down nervously in 5th grade. She had cramps and massive fear of going to school. She was beaten and verbally attacked on the way to school. The headmaster said only, "Your daughter does not have to say that she is German. Besides, you can give her a headscarf." We've changed schools now, and luckily things are going better now. Let me say that again. A Christian girl, a German girl, being insulted and bullied for being German. Not just with words, but physically beaten for the Sharia crime of being a Christian girl, a blonde girl with a German Hebrew name. Even though she wasn't Jewish, imagine what would have happened to her had she been Jewish instead of Christian. So this was horrific. It was so bad the girl had physical panic attacks and cramps. She didn't want to go to school to face the beatings. And the school's headmaster, why, his advice is put on a hijab. Hey, if you like that, sign up for my show every day. Click on the screen to subscribe.
Women around the world seem to be marching, protesting, and organizing, and there are so many young women who desperately need these women to stand up and say enough is enough. From grooming gangs that have abused thousands of young British girls, to female genital mutilation being on the rise in America, to forced arranged marriages for profit, a most recent example being a 16-year-old girl who refused to be sold off by her parents and was subsequently beaten, choked, and burned with hot oil by her parents. Was this in Pakistan? No. This was in Texas in the United States. So was this what these women were marching and fighting for? No, it had something to do with abortion, Trump, and how much they hate Trump. Thank God they marched. I'm Ben Davies. This is Pure Hollywood. On March 25th in Texas, it was reported that 16-year-old Marib al-Hishmawi had been sold for $20,000 by her parents to be married to an older man. She refused, and after running away, she was abused and burned with hot cooking oil. How does this happen, and where does this come from? According to UNICEF, 1 in 5 girls are sold off to be married before the age of 18. Seems like a gross violation of women's rights. Women's March? Not a peep. In fact, one of the Women's March leaders, Linda Sarsour, is a staunch advocate of arranged marriages. But Ben, this is ridiculous. You are taking one extreme case and blowing it up. Well, let's just look at another example, another gross violation of human rights, female genital mutilation, or FGM. Well, last summer, CNN freaking N even had to report on this because of the meteoric rise of this practice in America. Was there a march talking about this? No, we just still hate Trump. So 2 questions. Where do these practices come from? And 2, will they get worse? Well, let's take a look at Europe. Europe is often seen as the pinnacle of progressive progress, of enlightenment, equality, and cultural enrichment. And to the people living in communities outside of the political capitals and don't slurp the BBC, Europe can also be seen as a clear warning of these gifts cultural enrichment can bring without respect and rule of law in the countries that these other communities are flocking to. Cooking oil burning is one thing, but London has seen an explosion of acid attacks in the past few years. Even 500 in 2017 alone in the London area. And forget arranged marriages, what about just this selling off of young girls in general? And there is currently an investigation into the cover-up of these grooming gangs across Britain, but one of the most infamous cases being Rotherham in 2014, where 1,400 girls were reportedly groomed and abused by these gangs. And the Mirror reported an investigation into 40 years of cover-ups and looking the other way. Who are these people? Who are these men doing this? Yeah, unfortunately, there seems to be a common thread. And what is terrifying and the most frustrating is that the victims and the police alike say the same thing for why they did not act sooner. They were afraid of seeming racist. But don't you worry, there was a march in London. So were they speaking out against these grooming gangs, acid attacks, and child brides? No, they were talking about a gender pay gap that is disproved by every economist worth their salt on planet Earth. The sad truth is there is a common thread, and if we can't talk about it openly and honestly, then these people who are fleeing these oppressive environments and countries will find refuge in a country that allows and turns the other cheek to the very same human rights violations they have risked their lives to escape. So I'm sorry, Justin Trudeau, not all cultural practices are of the same value for people kind. And sorry, Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, I do not accept the fact that terror attacks are part and parcel to living in a big city. And yes, we can learn something from each other and build something great together with these different cultures, but that also means when you flee a country into a free country, you must respect those laws of the land and learn from that culture, including learning that it is not okay to sell off your daughter for money and burn her with hot oil for taking part in our culture. Freedom. I'm Ben Davies, this is Pure Hollywood. If you haven't done it already, you can now download the Rebel Media app. That way you have access to the entire Rebel lineup and can take it with you wherever you go.